How was pregnancy for you? Currently pregnant. My hormones are raging, and I feel like I'm constantly pulling my partner in the bedroom. Physically, emotionally, the hormones are going on all circuitry, so I'm loving it. We didn't do anything for the first 6-7 weeks because I was too nervous, haha. Then we got back in our typical once-a-week rhythm for a while there. But now that I'm getting very round and uncomfortable, it's down to every 2 weeks or so. I'm with your wife. I definitely try to initiate more because I feel bad for my husband than anything. I'd be perfectly fine with zero lol. Hormones are weird. Literally, we didn't have for like 3.5-4 months at one point, and when we finally did, she only did it because she said she felt bad I hadn't gotten any. By the end, she was kinda ready for the baby to come out, so we did it every couple days. But I'd say overall, we only had like 20 times the whole 9+ months she was pregnant. As a father, I can tell you all 3 pregnancies of my wife had similarities and differences. With our first, she was not interested in much at all. During the other 2, she was horny constantly. The biggest problem during became positioning, especially around the 5-6 month mark, where she really couldn't do certain things or lay certain ways. As long as both of you are open and communicate, that can be amazing simply because all those hormones you got going on really kick in during Y time. You gotta think of it like this. You have 3 stages of pregnancy, and each stage correlates with the trimester of pregnancy. First trimester, you can have any style you want, just like before. Second trimester, it's pretty much doggy style, only in the third trimester coyote style. That's where you sit by the hole and howl. It took us about 2 years and some therapy to get to a cadence that worked for us. In reality, our life is better now than before the kids, which I attribute to the therapy, but your mileage may vary. Best of luck to you. I have a great marriage, an excellent partner, and missing the physical intimacy was such a burden on me that I couldn't enjoy it. It took both of us realizing that physical intimacy was a critical part of our relationship maintenance and commit to treating it like such. Schedule it in on a regular cadence. Like an oil change. I brought the dipstick before the burden was lifted and we could focus on enjoying all the other parts of our marriage. She's had essentially no drive since we conceived 17 months ago, and I forget how deeply I buried these feelings of being totally unwanted. I understood during pregnancy, I understood after childbirth, but now I'm wondering if this will ever change. And I was reading this thread while rocking my son to sleep for the 3rd time in the middle of the night, just wondering what I did wrong. Just gotta throw this out there. It may never change, and you should talk to your wife about it. Some women have their hormones so acutely aligned to reproduction that drive basically goes to zero unless it's to make another baby. Throw full-time breastfeeding into the equation, and it's a guarantee. It's a real thing, and it happens. Talk to her about it. Go to therapy. She may even need testosterone. Not exactly answering the question, but my wife and I had been trying for baby number 2. We had been trying for a little while, and I was about to finish, and I said, boom, you're pregnant. She immediately told me to get off and laughed it off. Lo and behold, a month later, she got a positive pregnancy test, and we now have a wonderful daughter. I'll sometimes joke about how I call my shots, but can't really share the story with family, so here you go. Partner finishes, and was like, you're pregnant now, and was then shocked when a few weeks later, turned out to be true. He didn't take it well initially, but has come around to it now. In the nicest possible way. I don't know what the faff he expected would happen if he's having a bunch of unprotected with the partner who isn't on the pill. But I was happy as soon as I knew. So you know, I guess my wish came true. To be honest, maybe not. He's from a culture where it's still a somewhat taboo topic, and would have finished school there over a decade ago when this was even more true. He had no idea about STDs other than AIDS. I mean, you'd think some stuff would sink in due to cultural osmosis, but I've met fellow people brought up in wally open Western countries who are clueless, so I don't know. I guess I was always a healthy mix of pervy and nervous about disease, so I really made sure I understood this kind of thing. His first reaction was honestly, thought it took more than one go. So you judge if that's just surprise talking or true confusion. To be very clear, he is a very smart, generally savvy and well-educated guy, but can be a touchy topic for some people. The only other way I can think of a pregnancy occurring is IVF, but that's the same basic principles at play. It was weird. Not bad weird, but the body does some crazy things. The bigger I got, the more I could feel my uterus contracting after an orgasm. It was unsettling until I called my OB and was like, "Excuse me, but what the fafk," or something like that. She told me it was normal and not to worry. Stay hydrated and it won't be as noticeable. Towards the end of my pregnancy, I was so desperate to get my daughter out. Semen can start the dilation process, so was just a way to evacuate her from the hot tub party that was my uterus. Every woman is different, but no matter how gentle my husband was, I found third trimester to be painful, which sucked double time because the further along I became, the more he wanted to do it, minus the whole hurting me part. Oh, and it didn't even work. I went past my due date and had to have a C-section anyway. She's almost 13 now and is super stubborn to this very day. My wife and I remember this fondly. Her hormones were absolutely raging, and she was horny pretty much all the time. I've never had more than when my wife was pregnant. She was insatiable and wetter than I've ever seen her. We had to do the sideways maneuver when she got way pregnant, because she couldn't breathe if she was on her back, and obviously she couldn't lay on her stomach. But it worked for us. Then you can't do it for at least 6 weeks after your kid is born and you go into withdrawal. And my wife had postpartum pretty severely, so it was even longer after that. Was reluctant to do it. Found my wife really attractive while she was pregnant, but I was genuinely worried about hitting the baby with my cock, despite it being small and scientifically impossible. Was reluctant to do it. Found my wife really attractive while she was pregnant, but I was genuinely worried about hitting the baby with my cock, despite it being small and scientifically impossible. Pregnant now, not horny, always tired, swollen, uncomfortable, very sore nipples the whole way through. I've initiated it a few times because I missed the intimacy, but it's not been amazing for me. I'm 7 months now and have hemorrhoids and sciatica pain, so it's the last thing I want. My hormones sadly haven't made me horny at all. I hope after birth my drive comes back. Fucking awesome. With kid number 5, I was a slave for nearly the whole time. She was always so hot, so we kept the window open during the winter. It was the coldest winter in decades where we live. I never thought I would enjoy freezing my ass off so much. She was ravenous all hours. There is nothing higher than a woman carrying your child, even after the motherly glow and all that. We're 2 years after our 5th, and my wife thinks she's all stretched out of saggy all over, but I disagree. She's just as hot as when we were 20, just in different ways, and nothing as gross as she claims. Still, that mental block has done a tie number on our intimacy, despite my frequently complimenting and stating otherwise. Been a long time for me, but my wife was always craving it, and the further along she got the wilder it was. Even wanted it as she began labor, and the nurses were laughing because she didn't get clean-up time before getting to the hospital. Absolutely delighted every time she told me she was pregnant. Because, well, you can guess. Male here, and I loved it. Her tits were big and full, and she had a really healthy glow to her. Best of all, there was no worries about getting her pregnant anymore. No rubbers or birth control of any kind, just all-out natural. Wonderful IMO. Nothing to brag about. Early complications, so no intercourse. Just stimulation is aggravating for 20 weeks. But the first time after that post-6-week appointment, I needed to drink first cause I was not prepared at all, but I needed that dick. We both finished, and he was so happy and out of breath. I just started sobbing so bad, crying like a crocodile because it was so good after like a year of blah. Tears of joy. Such a weird experience. Fucking hormones. God, I miss those days. Makes me want to knock her up again. I loved every second of it. The first trimester was nice, more positions. By the third trimester it was mainly doggy style or on our sides. Very arousing, pounding your pregnant wife. With her hormones off the charts, she was consistently having multiple orgasms every time. My husband had a real pregnancy fetish. That is, until I got pregnant lol. I guess he loved the look of them, and the thought of with a pregnant woman, but he didn't really enjoy it when the time came. He was creeped out by his baby being right there. For both pregnancies, once I started really showing, we pretty much stopped having. My wife's last trimester for our third or last baby girl, she was downright forcing me at times to make daily deposits every morning before I left for work. She was so serious. She wanted that baby out yesterday. Well, it doesn't necessarily always induce, but human sperm does contain a high amount of prostaglandin, a hormone-like substance which ripens the cervix and begins to soften, thin out, helping dilation, which hopefully helps labor to start. Although in our case, none of the babies wanted to leave mama's womb lol, they all stayed well past the due date, which didn't make mama happy lol. She eventually had to be induced for both Sky and Emery. I just can't even imagine what it must be like for a woman carrying and growing a baby for 9 or so months. I have even more respect for what a woman goes through between witnessing natural birth and watching 2 C-sections. I'm here to tell you, the common cold kicks our tails. We would never make it though a pregnancy. I remember wanting way more during pregnancy. Unfortunately, my husband was turned off by my body, even though I only weighed 130 lb at delivery and am very petite. We tried a few different positions because it was awkward once I was far along, even with me on top. He said he could feel the baby through my belly and it was gross for him, so overall, not great. Both times I was pregnant, I became unable to orgasm around the second trimester, and that lasted through weaning. Was still enjoyable, but my drive was also way down. First trimester, I was too pukey for anyhow. When my drive came back though, it came back with a vengeance. Me and my ex were expecting a baby boy in July 2021. She was a wild different animal when it came to, she wanted to do it every minute of the day, and I kept up with her for the most part, but after she had our baby, she wanted it more than I could handle. Somewhere down the line she lost feelings, and we broke up. But yeah, that's how it was when she was pregnant. Latinas be tripping on. Fucking amazing. I'm stunned I didn't get pregnant again during the pregnancies. Prego now, and despite the morning sickness, it's great. Also zero worries about pulling out or condoms. My only gripe is I don't think I look as good. I'm fat, and my face has gone dark this time. But well, I don't have to look at me, and my partner looks as good as ever. Also afterwards, after all the bleeding is over, is pretty good too. I haven't asked my current partner how he feels about the changes because he is a bit conservative about discussing Yule topics. My ex-husband though felt prego was the best. Both with me and his current wife. Dude just had to tell me. I had zero interest while pregnant. My body honestly didn't feel like my own, and being pregnant felt terrible for 99% of the pregnancy. We did it when I was trying to naturally induce labor, but it felt kinda like a chore. My so also felt a little weird about it, poking baby even though he knows it's irrational, so neither of us were really revving to go. Sucks to be honest. Orgasms cause immense pain, Braxton Hicks, and a very hard stomach from a very angry baby. Uterus. It's hard to find an angle that doesn't hurt, and the gunk that comes out over the next few days is absolutely disgusting and worrisome. Plus, too heavy and bulky, can't find the right position, get tired and sore too quickly. Worst thing is, I'm so fucking horny all the time, but I have no interest in dealing with all the suffering during and afterwards. With my first pregnancy, was great. The hormones made everything more intense, and certain positions worked easily until quite late in the pregnancy. I was hoping to repeat the experience in my second pregnancy, but having a toddler to care for while growing a second one made me so tired that my husband barely ever saw me awake after the first one fell asleep. I don't have many memories from my third pregnancy, to be honest. Currently 7 months along. First trimester I didn't want much because of the nausea, but from roughly 14 weeks or so to the present, I craved my hubby constantly. The is amazing IMO. I happened to want it more in the middle of the night or mornings. Hubby had to set a time limit of acceptable time frames to wake him up during the night, though, so he is able to go back to sleep before work, which I respect. With my ex, it was great. She was constantly in the mood. Anytime we weren't working, We were in our apartment having in every room, with my wife. We didn't really have much before the pregnancy, and now during it, it's went down even further so. Was super difficult for me. Wife threw up almost constantly during the first trimester, to the point we had to have IVs multiple times. Second trimester was a little better, and we had maybe 4 times during that period. Third trimester it was over until the recommended go-ahead from the doctor was given. During my first pregnancy it was very infrequent due to a number of reasons. I had nonstop nausea in the first trimester, then high blood pressure through the rest of my pregnancy, which made me extremely tired and generally crappy feeling. When we did try, for some reason, it was absolute agony. Second pregnancy had no pain issues, but my hormone changes plus having a little toddler meant I wasn't interested in very often. My partner is amazing and very understanding though. Good news is that our life is even better after kids than it was before kids. From a man's perspective, it was weird, but for some reason, and it might sound like I'm some weirdo for saying it, but my then girlfriend was 10x more beautiful when she was pregnant, almost like her skin had a certain glow. Hard to explain. I'm pretty sure it was cause I was very happy about becoming a father, but regarding, I wasn't exactly thrilled all the time when she wanted it, but with her hormones going amok, I didn't mind too much. Getting her to the point of orgasm was a lot easier than when she wasn't pregnant. Barely had to do anything. My wife was super horny all the time. While it was awesome, it actually almost broke my penis. I had to ask my section chief if we were going to the field anytime soon, so I could give my little guy a rest. Was gone 2 weeks, worst mistake of my life. She jumped my bones not even 10 seconds into getting home from 2 weeks out in the desert of California. I had to wrestle her off me so I could at least go shower first. She joined me in the shower, then I didn't get any electrolytes for the next 6 hours. My tummy was rumbling, and she didn't care. I swear by the next morning I looked like a mummy. It was amazing until I needed catheters from weeks 12-18 for both kids in the first trimesters. Then it was just positions, time, and making sure kids were asleep again after we added the other. I loved it. Still no desire to be pregnant again or have another kid that attached to me for 2 years after. I love them. If you drop a newborn on my doorstep, I'll take it, but I'd prefer a toddler or something closer to 6-12 months if I have to go younger. I was super horny during my third pregnancy. Around month 3-4, we were going at it, and I started bleeding. After a call into the doc, she said get to the ear and get checked out. They did an internal ultrasound, and it took forever to find the heartbeat. We thought we'd lost the baby. It traumatized my husband a lot. They found the heartbeat thankfully, and all was well, but we had to take a break from for a while. Once I was given the all clear to go ahead again by my doctor, husband didn't want to have it all during pregnancy. The final 5 months of pregnancy and the 6-8 weeks after, waiting for my postpartum checkup and birth control to kick in was fucking torture for me. It took a year and a half after she was born to get our routine back to normal. It was rough, looking back. We should have gotten my husband some counseling for the situation. He was horrified and blamed himself for hurting me and possibly hurting the baby. His words. We weren't hurt. It was just a freak thing that happens in pregnancy sometimes. He was terrified that he was going to hurt me again. It's taken a lot of reassurance and communication to get back to where we were. I considered myself to have a higher than average drive prior to pregnancy, so my husband and I were curious just how horny I'd be once I was pregnant given what I'd heard from other women. Turns out, not horny at all. Libido went back to baseline within a month postpartum. Thank God. But I had less than no interest in during pregnancy. My husband also thought my pregnant body was super wide, so that was a pretty big bummer for him. It was great, and I swear having like every day or every other day throughout the pregnancy is what kept me from having any tearing when I gave birth both times. Just like the last 2 weeks before I gave birth, it got super painful, so we had to stop that. But otherwise, it's wonderful. I also was not a squirter before I ever got pregnant. And then after I got pregnant with my first baby, I started squirting, and I'm thankful that was something that stuck around after the pregnancy. My wife is 28 weeks pregnant, and we tried a few times a couple months ago, but I couldn't get into it. I like my privacy, and knowing there's a child right below me really made things awkward. I know it's all in my head. So we basically haven't had this whole time. She's not crazy horny either, and I don't go feral over the pregnancy look. Hopefully pick it back up after this kid is born. Basically the same. So many people remark that second trimester hormones are supposed to make you a horned up succubus, but that hasn't been our experience in the slightest. Super easy pregnancy with the only symptom being ligament pain. She's constantly sore, and that seems to dampen the arousal a good bit. Depends. First pregnancy. First trimester sucked. Second one was great. Third, I was horny as hell, but hurt so bad. So I basically kept dragging my husband into the bedroom, convincing him I would be okay, and then regretting it once we started. Second pregnancy. First trimester was okay, but second and third were phenomenal. I dunno what happened, but all the stars aligned and my libido was only beaten by my newfound sensitivity. Husband had a blast too. Terrible. My wife had a miscarriage right after at 12 weeks. Of course, the fetus was probably not alive since the beginning, and the miscarriage was induced by her orgasm. We were so terribly afraid that we had our kid. I was crying at the doctor saying, "But I faffed her so hard. I had my baby." But she was calming me down, saying that that was not possible. Must say I am a bit ashamed now about that, but I was very afraid. I was the pregnant one, and I was so huge and uncomfortable, and already felt like I was too full, so adding extra to that was just miserable. Ended up stopping and laughing about it. We were near the end after months of vomiting and hospital bed rest, and doctor ordered no white time. So it was a bad pregnancy all around, but husband was a champ. Pretty bad, honestly. We tried once or twice, but I had this mental block that I could hurt her or the baby, even though I know it's very unlikely. Some people have a pregnancy fetish or aren't bothered by it at all, but I'm not one of those people. Made me feel super guilty whenever my wife was horny. I was in the mood all the time with all 5 of my pregnancies. The drawback is, after I had each one, my libido went on an extended vacation for a year or so it'd have to fake it, fake interest, fake the orgasms, all of it. Then with pregnancies 4 and 5, each orgasm would cause my uterus to contract. Even at 6 weeks pregnant, it happened, making me not really want the orgasms. Odd. With my first pregnancy, it was great. I wanted to do it a lot of the time, and could climax with just penetration. What until the point had never happened before. Eventually, by week 34, PGP kicked in, and there was nothing until 6-8 weeks after my C-section. My third pregnancy was the opposite. I had severe morning sickness, nausea till week 15-16, then hardly had any drive till week 25 when the SPOD kicked in, and it was physically impossible to do it anymore. I can count on one hand how many times we had between finding out I was pregnant at 3 weeks gestation till 20 weeks after my C-section.